Good morning. This is Southampton Town Supervisor Jay Schneiderman. I'd like to call to order this work session of the Southampton Town Board on the second day of July, 2020. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag,
the
United
States of America,
and
and to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation,
under God,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. All right. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Certainly. Supervisor Schneiderman.
Here.
Councilwoman Lofstad.
Here.
Councilman Martell.
Here.
Councilman Bouvier.
Here.
Councilman Schivoni.
Present.
All right. We're all here. So let's get started. The first thing I'd like to do is ask our Public Safety Director, Ryan Murphy, who has sort of been in the trenches throughout this pandemic, assisting in so many ways, from getting PPE to various community entities and hospitals and things like that, to helping design reopening plans for town facilities, to enforcing all of the various guidance and helping our businesses understand who can open, who can't open, and under what conditions. And Ryan, it's constantly changing. So we're in the middle of phase 3 and heading toward phase 4, maybe next week. So why don't you tell us how things are going, maybe address some of the community concerns we're hearing about, some people not wearing masks or following social distancing. And tell us, we're changing some of the town hall protocols. We're going to open town hall without an appointment, subject to a certain number of people who are allowed in. So you can talk about how that's going to all work and whatever else you want to share. Oh, you're muted, Ryan.
Yes, I've got a special guest.
Hey, Jim.
Jim's here as well.
I tried to get on before. For some reason I couldn't get on. I'm here now.
So you got a 2-for-1 deal. Anyhow, so yes, hopefully we're moving into phase 4 next week as of Wednesday. Phase 4, some of the information about phase 4 that's come out from the governor's office, I know, is disappointing to some of the members of the community in that it's a little more restrictive than we had hoped that it would be. There are facilities that are still not going to be allowed to open in phase 4. We have not heard anything still from the state about any subsequent phases. As far as we knew, phase 4 was supposed to be the final phase, but I guess we're going to be having, kind of a 4A, 4B, or maybe there's an unknown 5 that's yet to be announced, that will allow some of these other facilities like gyms and some larger mass gathering spaces to be able to open, because they are still going to be restricted. Phase 4 is going to allow for some low risk entertainment type activities to start to occur. They're going to be limited in the occupancy for outdoor spaces, whatever their normal is. And we're working with a lot of facilities because many of them don't necessarily have a pre-existing rating for their outdoor space. So we'll be working with them with square footage or normal occupancy, what a normal occupancy would be, and then what the reductions would be to accomplish the 33% allowable by the state. First risk entertainment facilities by the state orders is going to be limited to 25%. So those are some of the changes that we anticipate. I'm sure people have heard that New York City will not be opening up indoor dining as they hope to proceed through to the next phases. So we're yet to see what kind of impacts some of those types of decisions have on us. We're hopeful that we continue to progress through to phase 4, but obviously there is a well-known spiking and resurgence that we're seeing throughout the country. So hopefully that won't cause us any holdups in progressing on to phase 4. The governor doesn't take any actions to just kind of slow the progression in response to what we're seeing nationwide. We're also dealing with some new orders that involve people having to quarantine if they're returning from, I believe, different states. As a town, we're dealing with those implications on our employee side of things. Thankfully, with widespread mobility now, and not having the same types of restrictions where you have to present with at least X number of symptoms in order to qualify to get a test, like you did in the very beginning of COVID. After about 2 days of being back, to allow for the incubation period to start if they had an exposure on their last experience within one of these states, should be able to get a test. And if the test comes back negative, we should be able to get them back a heck of a lot faster than the 14-day quarantine period, having undergone the appropriate testing and get a negative result. Other than that, our numbers are holding fairly steady. I actually just reached out to both PBMC and Southampton Hospital just a little while ago to touch base with them and see how they're doing. Southampton Hospital reported, just 2 COVID patients within their facility. So their numbers are still down, which is great for our area. And absolutely 0 of the 2 were in ICU or intubated or anything like that. So those are good numbers locally. Happy to hear that. I'm thinking PBMC is probably going to give us a similar response. I have not heard, or do I have any reason to believe that their numbers are up considerably or anything as well. And speaking with the supervisor yesterday, we had some successful offerings of COVID testing and COVID antibody testing that the town sponsored and coordinated with a outside vendor. Last week, we did that at with the cooperation and thank you to Southampton School District. We hosted that at the elementary school property next to Town Hall. And then on Friday, that was on Thursday, and then on Friday, we hosted it at Red Creek Park. Due to the success of that and the interest that seemed to be present from the community, I believe we're going to work with the vendor to try and offer that again, hopefully somewhere out in perhaps the Bridgehampton area, and then on the west side of the township as well. So we were looking to maybe space those out geographically so that if people are interested in affording themselves of that kind of testing, it's available somewhere locally to them. So we had, I know by noon on Thursday last week, they had conducted more than 60 tests at the drive-up facility between Town Hall and the school that day. So, and most of that was walk-ups. Most of that was community members. It wasn't even all town employees by that point. But over the course of the day, they had quite a few town employees as well as community members that they were able to provide that service to. So I think we're going to continue that outreach. Outside of that,
I just want to jump in because my wife and I both availed ourselves of that facility. It was really well run. It was really well run, and we were very appreciative. And we tested negative on both counts. So, and it was very orderly, and there's a lot of interest. I got calls from others wanting to know about a second round of it. So I appreciate that information.
All right, good. Yeah, I spoke to the supervisor yesterday, and he expressed interest in if we could offer it again. And I've spoken to some of the other folks at Town Hall that helped to coordinate that with me, and I think we're going to be reaching out to the vendor shortly to discuss additional offerings. They had told us that that was a possibility when we first set this one up. So I think we're going to avail ourselves of those options and maybe try and coordinate. I'd like to see at least 2 more offerings, as I mentioned, on the west and east ends of the town, so that people in those areas have a little more access to it. And, on the east side, there may even be folks from East Hampton that want to take advantage of it as well, since it'll be a closer facility for them. It was quick, it was easy, and it's a nice service to be able to afford to the people. It costs the town absolutely nothing, which is always a nice thing as well. All it is some coordination real estate from us. We just have to create a spot and set up the scheduling. Outside of that, it's no cost to the town. So it's a great service that we can provide to the public at zero dollar value to us, so that we don't have to incur any additional expense.
Brian, could you talk a little bit about Town Hall and the changes next week in terms of?
Sure. We're going to be expanding our accessibility to the public as of next week is the best way to describe it. We are going to be bringing back more of our staff. A lot of our departments are already at 100% staffing. Any that are not, that are below 50%, are below 75% staffing as of this moment, will be going up to at least 75% staffing next week. If the department is capable, just to go all the way up to 100%, and the need and safety precautions dictate that that's achievable, then we welcome them to do so. As far as the public goes, we will be continuing a similar system to what we have now, except we will be entertaining walk-ups. It does not have to be by appointment only, but the spatial restrictions in how many people can occupy any space at any time will still be in place. Those restrictions are set up based on maintaining 6-foot distancing. So let's just take, for example, because Sunday's on, the clerk's office. I believe the limitation that we have in there is 2 people at any time, so that they can space out appropriately and not be right next to each other at the counter. If they're 2 different guests, obviously, if it's 2 people that are getting married, they can stand next to each other, unless they don't want to, in which case they should reconsider their nuptials.
Yes.
But so we're going to be maintaining those limitations as we go forward. We're just going to be taking away the need for appointments. What we want to caution members of the public on is that may lead to wait times in the queuing, at the front of the building. We will have security on. We will have our, security guards triaging that, working with the people. If you're waiting on the line for access to the building department and a pass becomes available because someone else has left, security personnel will walk up and ask if anyone's waiting to go into the building department and get them in, and advance them in the line so that they can get into that department. So we're gonna work with everybody as best as possible to try and progress forward in our accessibility. And we just ask for, patience from the public as we continue to progress through this. We're making sure that the members of the public that are visiting the facility are safe, as well as our staff at the same time. So this is a continued progression in our reopening of Town Hall. We've been working on this, and we've been successful for the last couple of weeks, and that's certainly to the credit of all the departments and the way that they've orchestrated their scheduling and staff within each one of the departments. And it's gone well so far, and we hope that it continues to go well. There's a lot of local control that's available to each of the departments based on what they can handle within them.
Brian,
Yes, and if I could just mention something, I appreciate the local control part of your statement there, because I will be exercising some of that local control and continuing to have a hybrid of appointments, because we have such a backlog of wedding, marriage license requests that we need to manage it in some sort of, the best way and most effective way to do that is to continue with the appointments, but our calendar is full. So we're taking anybody who's coming in who can fill that. But, yesterday we had a situation where suddenly more than 2 people were in the office somehow waiting, and I very expeditiously, brought one back outside to wait at a table that was outside until we could manage, because one marriage license is 2 people, and that takes up my quota. So the appointment part of it has been working well to that regard, and I'm going to continue that, but I will post whatever information is relevant to that on the website so that people understand how to best use the system.
Yeah, of course, I think we encourage people, if they know that they need to do business on hall, if they can set an appointment, if they could call the department, if they can make those types of arrangements, I think we want to continue to encourage that for public visitors. But you know, if there's space available and somebody shows up and we can accommodate, as you indicated,
Absolutely.
you know, all the departments have been making an effort to try and do that. What's been occurring up to this point is that the people would step back outside and call the department and make an appointment for right then and there if it's available. Now we'll be able to accommodate that hopefully a little more smoothly for different places. If there's availability, they'll just be able to go in and take that spot.
And who is going to manage that? Is that being managed at the security desk about whether there's a spot available and they can just walk in?
Yeah, it'll be managed at the security desk. And we'll work out some of those details still with security. But just as with the last system, I think the first day was a little bit kind of feeling it out as we went through it, and then it corrected itself very quickly, and we had minimal bumps in the road. I think we can expect probably the same sort of thing this time, and we'll make sure it straightens itself all out as we go through this trial and error process.
One way or the other, it'll work itself out, Ryan.
Ryan, I had a question about the phases. Phase 4 is in fact a phase unto itself, and there are restrictions within phase 4. I got this question the other day, and there will be a point when the state is going to deem us out of phase 4, and then we're done with the phase system. Is that how it's going to go, to your knowledge?
Well,
right. We don't know how it's going to go. I don't mean to say that.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
That's really the best answer is we don't there has to be something beyond phase 4. When we went into this whole thing, we were presented with a guideline that said that there were 4 phases.
Right.
But there are things that have been excluded now from phase 4. And so there must be a beyond phase 4. We just don't know what beyond phase 4 looks like. The best that we've been able to get as we progress through this is with regions upstate hitting the phases a week or two before us, we're able to get a little visibility on what the next phase looks like. So with like the capital region, I believe is in advance of us in the phase progression. We may see whatever beyond phase 4 looks like as early as the beginning of next week so that we get a little bit of a foreshadowing. But so far, we don't know what that is.
Okay, good. And with cases of Corona-19 spiking across the country, it's going to alter things here in New York, even if it's going well here. So thank you, Ryan.
All right. Just one other quick thing, and I want to jump into the agenda because we do have a group waiting to see us. In terms of the open meetings law, the governor is allowing these Zoom meetings up until early July. We're expecting that to be extended. So I can't really tell the board for certain that we will continue work sessions via Zoom. We're going to try to keep the main meetings in person or as a hybrid like we did last time. There may come a point where we're no longer allowed to do that. So we'll just have to keep you posted. That may require renoticing a meeting or two if we're no longer allowed to do it through the internet like this. Okay, so thank you, Ryan. And you're welcome to stay on the call. I know you're a busy man, so you don't need to be here if you don't want to, but we certainly welcome your attendance. All right, let's move on now. We had for 10:30 scheduled a presentation. This has to do with STAR. This is a group that is trying to build an indoor pool, in a public pool in the town of Southampton. We've met with them before. We've even reserved some property over in Hampton Bays at the Red Creek Park for their potential use, should they be able to raise the money. I wanted to have them update us. There's been some interesting developments. Let's see if we can get them into the meeting here. So I see Dr. Joe is here, Josephine Di Vicenzi. Hi, Doctor. And Kim is coming into the meeting. Kim, are you by phone or by video? Oh, there you are. All right.
I'm here.
Hi, Kim.
Excellent. And
Hey, Sunday.
do we have others as well?
Tim Rumpf and
Yeah.
Tony Panza.
Yes, 1 second.
While we try to get those folks on, let me just give some backgrounds. The idea of a year-round indoor pool aquatics facility has been a dream of this community for, I don't know, several generations. The closest we've been able to get is in East Hampton. There's an indoor pool that some people have used, and now at Suffolk County Community College Eastern Campus in the western portion of town, there is an indoor pool, though it's available mostly to the college students, but at times also open to the public. We've been looking to see if we can do sort of like an SYS type of facility that's a community-based indoor swimming pool, and this group, STAR, which you'll have to remind me what it stands for, Southampton Town, is that the ST? Aquatic Recreation? All right.
Correct.
I put it together. So they have been active trying to pursue potential supporters, donors, and trying to figure out where to best locate such a facility and how to design it, how big it should be, what it should include. So let's see who we have on now. We've got Dr. Joe, we've got Kim. Who else do we have?
Tony Panza, the architect, and also Tim Rumpf, the site planner.
Oh, Tony, all right, and you're muted, Tony. And we have Tim.
Tim, unless he has his just phones in.
I don't see Tim unless it's on the next screen. Is Tim here?
I can't tell.
I'm texting him now.
All right, let's see if we can get him as part of this. I see Ryan's part of this. Charles, do you want to take Ryan's video feed and terminate that?
I can.
I just texted him to see if they were having trouble.
I texted Ryan, so.
Okay.
Hi, this is Jody
He's up.
looking for Tim Rumpf to join the public meeting.
Ryan's still in the building.
That's okay. We don't need the open video, though.
That's fine.
I just lost Tommy John's video.
This morning, I just sent it to him in email.
There's Tommy John, muted, but
Thanks.
so we're just waiting on Tim Rumpf from RS Designs.
There. It could be coming from JODEV51@gmail. It came from Charles Certain about 10.
I sat on a committee for several years called Shark, trying to work on this pool project too, when I was back in the Parks Department. So we've been, in some form, somebody's been working on this for a long time.
I see we almost have Tim with us here. And Joe, are you going to kick this off?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so let's just get Tim.
And we can start if, I think Tim is here.
Let's make sure we have Tim first.
Great.
There we are.
Oh, there he is.
Hello.
All right, so we're gonna get, Tim, can we hear you?
Yeah, can you hear us?
Yep. Okay.
Great.
All right, so
There they
let's,
are.
Joe, you can reintroduce your team too, but I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Josephine DiVincenzi to introduce the topic.
Well, good morning. As president of, and Jay, you had it right, Southampton Town Aquatics and Recreation, STAR, I want to thank the board for the opportunity to talk about something positive and hopeful after many months of focusing on the
Terminate your video. Oh, because it was taking up space on the screen.
Can we mute that?
Yeah, go ahead.
But, you know, it's nice to think about something positive and hopeful after many months of focusing on the real significant health and safety issues that we've all been focused on. And while I think we, after hearing Ryan speak, we have a ways to go to eradicate this threat, we want to share with you the good news that despite COVID-19, the STAR Board has been continuing to meet, continuing to listen, and make decisions that we think will draw us closer to making this Aqua Center a reality. And you're right, we've been at this for a long time. We know the need is still great, but once built, this center will be transformational for the town. It won't only enhance the underlying health and safety of our residents who all live surrounded by water, but it'll also be an economic boost, bringing millions of dollars and jobs to our local economy, not only during construction, but we estimate that following the opening, we'll be employing almost 40 full-time equivalent positions. Our board is committed to, wherever possible, utilize local people to work on the project. To that point, joining me today is our new executive director and East End native, Kim Folks, our site planner and Southampton native, Tim Rumpf, and Steve Naroda from Aris Design, and North Sea architect, Tony Panza of Roger McCagg Architects. So since the last time we spoke with the town supervisor and deputy supervisor, we have met with CACs and people in the community about the project. Based on that feedback, we scaled back the size of the facility from 3 pools to 2. We scaled back the costs to get it under 20 million, and about 14 of which would be capital expense directly. Because we scaled back the size, we were also scaling back operating expenses, which will allow us to operate this facility in the black after only 3 years. Most pools in this country are built and operated by government entities because most pools in this country operate in the red. But we won't get into a lot of that detail. We want to go over a critical moment that we're in right now. And I want to introduce Kim Folks, who has been working hard to get up to speed on this project since she came on board in November. Kim will give us a sense of what we've been doing on marketing and outreach. Kim? Hello?
You may be muted, Kim.
I'm here. Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Joe, and thank you to the board for having us today and getting us on the agenda. As Joe mentioned, I am a native, born in Southampton Hospital. I've been a lifelong swimmer, and I got involved with this project because I see, as we all know, that this is a really essential facility and an essential service to our community for safety, for scholarship purposes, et cetera. I wanted to just bring you up to date, as Joe mentioned. Despite the pandemic, we have been really, really hard at work this winter, taking advantage of really streamlining our infrastructure, our marketing, our digital presence, and really getting ourselves poised and ready to begin the process of really asking for some significant support. We have some things lined up for later this month, which is why it is such an imperative and why we're doing everything we can to fast track the dedication of the land that we'll speak about in a bit. to really be able to present that to potential donors, many of whom we've been sowing many seeds over the winter, both large and small, to get community support and build that up, as well as really planting seeds, as I say, for some significant support. Some of those introductions will begin in the middle towards the end of this month. So that's why it's so critically important that we do it whatever we can to secure a location. The board too has just made many strides and has been incredibly dedicated in the meetings and taking their own actions, and we've developed committees, and we're very excited for a lot of the critical progress that has been made, in addition to hiring Tim on board and Aris Design, as well as Tony Panza, also a local architect. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Joe, and we'll get started with the presentation.
Right. In February of this year, I met and presented before the village board because we were considering a parcel at Downs Park. And as we started exploring that parcel, we realized how much recreational use it's already getting, and the amount of available space looked pretty tight. But to make the perfect decision, to make the right decision, we needed more data. So we went to the person who looks at a lot of these park sites for the town and the community, and that's Tim Rumpf and Aris Design, to resolve the question of, would Downs Park have been the right location?
What do you mean by Downs Park? I'm not familiar with that term. You mean Red Creek Park?
No. I mean Downs Family Park, that Tim will review the four parks.
Off Flying Point Road.
Offline.
Oh, I see. That, okay, I know the park you're talking about in the village.
Yes, and I will say that the village was very enthusiastic about this project and the potential of having it there. But once we literally started looking at the nitty-gritty of this footprint, which has been dramatically reduced from what we thought was 43,000 square feet to under 30, we still knew it was going to be tight. So we asked Tim to look at this as a site planner, and I'm going to turn it over to Tim who did an analysis of all the sites we've been considering. Tim?
Okay, thank you, Joe. Mr. Supervisor, board members, it's Tim Rumpf and Steve Naroda from Aris Design. As Joe was alluding to, back in the middle of June, we prepared a little memorandum, an analysis of the really four sites. We looked at the Downs Family Park on Flying Point Road. We looked at also the Moses Lane Park, which I think the board is familiar with within the village, as well as the McGee Street site and also Red Creek Park. And there are all, issues with the Downs Family Park that Joe mentioned. Back in the early 80s, that process was went through the secret process. An environmental impact study was done. And during that environmental impact study, the village was required to limit the use of the park. There was no lighting. The only structures allowed were the backstops, goalposts, the playground, and the existing restrooms. So the potential to put an auditorium there was going to be very difficult because of the neighbors and the opposition that was had during that time. The Moses Lane site, which I believe the board's familiar with, has been controversial as well. We've been working with the village trustees on a reduced plan for 2 tennis courts and 2 bocce courts, which was receiving opposition from the Moses Lane community. And we felt that locating an aquatic center there was very impractical. And then we looked at, we went back to Red Creek Park, and I'm going to ask Steve to put up a little regional map that we did to to explain this, but the Red Creek Park site that was previously dedicated to the Star Board has become problematic just because of the overall development of Red Creek Park, because of its location within the Central Pine Barrens. There are issues with clearing now that the park has been as it's been developed. We were fortunate enough to be able to build, be involved with the construction of the soccer field as well as the skate park back in the 90s. So we're very familiar with the restrictions and what has been going on in the park over the years. And I think the park's, it's a great facility for the town and being well used. So and Joe alluded to this earlier, because of the natatorium that's come online at the Suffolk County Community College on the west side of town, now it appears, that something closer to the village, within Southampton might be a more optimal site for this facility. So we went to the McGee Street site, which we are very familiar with in our office because of our involvement with Southampton Ventures over the years in the preparation of plans for the potential development of that site. And it appeared that the McGee Street site gave us the access that we needed, because it's within 100 yards of the light at McGee Street and County Route 39. It was already previously developed as a day school for the IGHL people. And it appears to be, based on this graphic, central to between the pool in East Hampton and the pool at the Eastern Campus. So it just starts to make a lot of sense to us. Let's move quickly into the kind of the site analysis where we are. So this is the site that we were talking about. The intersection with County Route 39 is to the north up that left-hand corner up there. You'll see where the clearing is for where the old day school was for IGHL, and how heavily vegetated this is. So we were trying to take advantage of that. And working with Tony and his group, we've come up with a kind of a conceptual site plan that to us demonstrates the ability for us to be able to build this facility with proper vehicular and pedestrian circulation. This is our very conceptual site plan for discussion and review. The footprint is shown is approximately 26,000 square feet. And the parking that is shown is roughly 170 cars with some bus parking, because we anticipate, our high schools in the area and schools using this for physical education as well as competition. Part of our development of this site we're also very aware of setbacks as well as the County Route 39 study, which is, moving the town towards, including the sustainability aspects of this. So we've already started to think about, permeable paving, rain gardens and bioswales to treat stormwater drainage, native plantings, the use of solar powered site lights, and those kinds of things. So and as you see, as you enter from McGee Street, we wanted to keep that cluster of all those large trees that are there now. So the streetscape along McGee Street, we anticipate will not change. And the building is located, as we discussed earlier, in the location of where the old building was. So the building will be set back, will not be prominent to the street on McGee Street. and really surrounded by a lot of the vegetation that's existing on the site now. Tony, I don't know if you'd like to move into just a brief discussion of the architecture of the layout at this point.
Yeah, Tim, thank you very much. Thank you to the board for having us. And Tim, we can just keep it where you are the presenter, and I'll have you go through. But just while we're on this slide, one of the great opportunities here for this project is the way that the building's been sited. We have we can put glass on the north side of the building, which is great. I'm sure you've heard about north side glass, no glare. And to bring a lot of wonderful light into a pool facility just goes to elevate the facility. So the site analysis that Tim had mentioned in terms of the location works out, but also the site itself, the proportion of the site and the orientation we're able to get with the building. So very quickly, we can go into the plan on the next slide there. As Joe had mentioned, the project was scaled back. There's two pools. There's the competition pool, we'll call it the cold water pool, and then the pool to the left, which is the warm water pool, for laps, activity, and there'll be items there for children, mix of all ages. The rest of the ground floor is locker rooms, entry. A big component of it is also to utilize meeting rooms. We'll call them meeting rooms, event rooms, party rooms. Very similar to SYS, where you can use the rink for a birthday party, then go into one of the meeting rooms, or for a group, could be the swim team, could meet in one of the meeting rooms, or any outside group, even not coming to swim, if they needed a meeting room and they wanted to use a location such as this, it'd be wonderful. Lots of glass for transparency, both from interior to exterior and between the meeting rooms and the swimming area. Next slide would be we have about just a third of the building is having a second floor with fitness spaces up there and additional meeting rooms. You'll also see the stands over on the right, which is for when there are competitions for viewing. So we're pretty, we've gotten into the floor plan so that we know that we can make things work on the site, and the board, the STAR board, is very excited about it. Think that it fills all the requirements, and we think it would be a wonderful amenity for the Southampton residents in Southampton town. But, maybe if you just jump to the next slide, we haven't delved incredibly far into the aesthetic of the facility, but we know this is an image of a pool facility that happens to be in Canada, showing an activity pool in the foreground. In the background, there's a competition pool. Open, light, airy. The site allows us to be able to do this because of the location. We're getting the north light, but also heavily treed all around the exterior of the building. And this would be one of the viewing areas that we want to bring into it. So this is the aesthetic that we're looking at for the interior. One more image that shows, again, this isn't our exact pool. It's just the idea of bringing in the light and also having the second floor space with a lot of transparency, and the idea of a little bit more warmth in the ceiling that you see here. So if the town is as excited as we are with this, then we would, and we can investigate this site further, then we would advance everything along.
Thanks, Tony, and Tim, and Steve, and Kim. And just to wrap up here, following our conversation earlier this week with the supervisor and deputy supervisor, I did contact Fred Thiel, and who's the Community Preservation Fund guru, and said, do you anticipate any issue with this site? He said he sees nothing significant here, as because this parcel was purchased with CPF funds and within the resolution of the town's resolution, it did designate this piece for Parks and Recreation. Therefore, at the very least, one public hearing might suffice, but let's take it a step at a time. I do want you to know that we did check on that. So at this point, we're asking the town board to consider dedicating the parcel at 344 McGee for the Star Aqua Center in lieu of the 2 acres that were dedicated for us at Red Creek Park. We believe that this site will give us the sufficient land for not only building it, but buffering it and giving us ample parking that won't interfere with other people's uses as it was going to be at Red Creek. We think this is the site that'll get the greatest usage, and that map certainly shows that it would be pretty centrally located, and being on closer to the Hampton Bay side, it'll allow access from that end of town. So we think this is the site with greatest usage. And one of the other real primary goals of our building, we want it to be sustainable. And this site would allow us, as Tony said, to maximize solar and geothermal potential to make this building that will have heavy utility use on. We want to make it environmentally sustainable. And the final thing is, this project, when we started it 3 years ago, we were looking to try to build a 50-meter Olympic-sized pool to attract people from the Northeast. This has been way, way scaled down to a place where we feel the focus will be on the local community. The town really needs this. Well, the facility in East Hampton we utilize, but quite frankly, and I spoke with the athletic director in Southampton schools, the only exposure or waterproofing of our kids right now is 2 in grade 2nd and grade 3. We give the kids 3 opportunities to get in the water. They spend 3 hours on the bus and 45 minutes in the water. So that's not enough to protect our kids. And my long-term interest in this stems, as you've heard before, from the drowning of 2 of my students when I was high school principal here. That need still exists, and we are making some efforts, but it's scratching the surface of preparing our kids and giving activities, especially in wintertime, to the children of this community and the adults. As a senior citizen now, I can say there's not a heck of a lot to do in Southampton in the winter. So again, we've listened. We hope that we've given you what you need to make this decision, and we look forward to any questions you might have at this time.
So, Dr. Joe, first of all, thank you. Thank you for all your years dedicated to pursuing this and not losing faith and hanging in there to make it happen. I happen to like this parcel. I think this is a great use of this parcel. It's centrally located. But now we have been holding a piece, as you know, in Red Creek Park, which you did mention in your presentation that there's some issues there with clearing, pine barrens, restrictions, and the fact that there is a pool now in that area that hadn't been there when this all was sort of preconceived. So I understand the desire to look toward this site. That makes sense. So are you asking us then, in terms of the board's decision, to release the hold on the Hampton Bay site and put a hold on this site for a certain period of time to allow you to raise the money to build at this site?
Correct.
Okay.
That is our hope, but of course we don't want to release the Red Creek site until we get the approval.
And I did also have a conversation with Fred Thiel about whether you can build an indoor recreational facility on a CPF property. And it sounds like, yes, you can. CPF funds cannot be used to build it, but it can be placed there, provided we may have to amend the CPF management plan for this particular property to include this type of use. So there would be a public hearing on that at some point. I think most people in the community will support this. I think there will be some who are concerned about traffic impacts, though I think they'd be quite light at this location. I'm sorry. Knowing how these facilities are used and the fact that you've scaled it down so much. So this is one of the pieces that was originally proposed for Tuckahoe Center. That may have been part of a supermarket had the board allowed that to move forward, which that, as you know, was withdrawn after significant community opposition. But that supermarket would have generated tremendous amount of sort of constant traffic and at potentially the worst times. So this is much more controlled. All right, let me kick it to the board and see if anybody has any particular questions. I'm encouraged by it. I love the new design and the scaling back, and I think the location's great as well. But anybody on the board want to ask any questions or make a comment at this point?
Or it seems like a.
No,
Go ahead, Julie.
Thank you. Since I can't see anything right now, I'm going to have to hold all my comments until I can actually see a map and see where, and I understand the general area of the placement, but I definitely would like to look over things before I make any further comments. So thank you.
All right, John? Who else wanted to be heard? I heard at least one or two voices.
Yeah, that was me, Jay.
Oh, Tommy John, okay.
This is an amenity that Southampton Town could certainly use, particularly in this location, you know, with the other pools on either side of the town. So we're kind of bookend, but we don't have anything within the town. And I am particularly mindful of the safety concerns that were brought up in this meeting. We have a lot of water, and our kids need to learn how to swim at an early age. So those reasons are certainly compelling. I'd like to look, I've just seen this for the first time and saw that this was on this meeting about 24 hours ago now. And I would like to take a look at the proposal deeper before I give further comment. But you know, it is a need that the town, it's a need that, you know, needs to be addressed in the town. So I want to thank everybody for bringing it forward.
So I had some questions, some technical questions.
Go ahead, John.
I wasn't sure you could hear me. I'm seeing the star. The screens aren't shared, so it's a little difficult to know who's there. So I think maybe directed at Tim. You know, we have an energy goal here in the town of Southampton, and I think, you know, knowing that Tim's involved, I know he's very aware of those goals and what we want to accomplish. So I just had some questions. Someone had mentioned geothermal power and a combination of solar. If you have a power budget, that would be helpful. It would be helpful for us to understand what the carbon footprint of this looks like. And also some of the technical issues involving the pool and how it's being heated, and how are you doing standard chlorination, or are you doing ultraviolet or other means of treating the water? How the water is handled, stored, and recycled. Do you expect to have an effluent of the pool water at some point during your regular maintenance? Those things are important. And also be aware that, you know, we're looking at HERS ratings, extending those HERS ratings into commercial buildings. And Tim, I know you're really familiar with that. The other issue that and it's not an issue, I think this is a great idea, and I like the location. So I support the concept, but I just want to be sure that it's aligned with the goals that our sustainability committee has, and it's also aligned with the town-wide goals of energy, and also relative to the septic system. I assume logically that you would be putting in an SDP, a small treatment center that's dedicated to that building only, or an IE system. I don't know what your flow rates are. So I'd love to get sort of that kind of more technical information that I can bring back to our sustainability committee to talk about. My last question is the jurisdiction of this. Am I understanding that this is within the Southampton Village jurisdiction?
No.
Yeah.
No, it's outside the village.
It's outside. All right. So in that case, those are my particular issues that I'd love to focus on, and I think you've already sort of alluded to them. So I'm sure you've given them a lot of thought and consideration. But if I could get that information, that would be helpful in my review of the project. But I love what you come up with, so I certainly support it.
But Joe, can I ask you, and it comes in a form of a text from somebody who's watching the video. They wanted to know if the pool could be used at all for scuba diving, and would it be deep enough to do any kind of training there? I know we had talked about this at the Hampton Bays location. So what is the depth of the pool? I don't think there was any diving in the proposed, so.
Well,
You go ahead.
since our meeting, we clarified that we will have the minimum diving 3-meter boards that will be required for high school and college competition. Currently at East Hampton's Y, they don't have that. And so all the teams and the kids preparing for high school and college competitions and scholarships are at a great disadvantage because there is no diving capability there. We would, at one end of the pool, have the capacity for diving competition, and therefore I would make that assumption, but I'll defer to Tony. And certainly we do have one of the most accomplished and well-recognized aquatic facility companies in the world. Councilman Hunsaker has been working with our team. And we would be, once we get the site basically settled down and we get the, hopefully the significant movement on donations, that we can start really getting into more technical issues. But to address John and your concerns, yes, there would be some diving, and that potentially could be expanded for scuba. John, to address your environmental concerns, I happen to have a master's degree in environmental science. This is near and dear to my heart. And I think Tony had alluded to a system that really would work on the concerns about energy, given that a facility like that is a high energy demand. So I don't know if Tony wants to talk about the cogen, but It is our priority that this will be leads or better construction and a sustainable facility. Tony?
Yep.
Or Tim?
Yeah, you touched on the key term there is cogen, which is cogeneration, or CHP, combined heat and power. When you have to heat the pools, the warm pool, even the cold pool is heated, and you have to keep the space heated. You utilize the energy from creating that heat to actually develop the power. So it's a combined heat and power system. I don't know that exists currently on a project in Southampton. We have done it very successfully at the Darien YMCA, and something we'd be looking to do here.
So just to follow up on that, how is that primarily fueled?
We would look to use natural gas. Natural gas would create the heat, and then from that we're going to gain electricity.
So are you talking about a fuel cell here?
Well, there's a number of different. Well, I'll just leave it at we would be going with combined heat and power, but what the exact system we would be engineering, it would take us some time to choose the best available.
All right. So yeah, I mean, maybe offline you could fill me in a little bit more on that. I'm just a little concerned about natural gas and fuel cells and some of the output, particularly on the emissions side, particularly on our CO2 budgets that we're concerned about. Somebody mentioned geothermal at one point. I'm sure that's part of the hybrid system. I don't know whether that's possible in that area, but I'm sure you guys have looked at that. But please consider that we do have these goals, and the state has a goal of 2040 to, be carbon neutral. So any fossil fuel generation, you'll be taking electricity off the grid. We have established a CCA, community choice aggregation in the area, and we're hopeful that that'll be able to allow us to take electricity from the grid that's produced from alternative sources. In your case, it sounds like you're going to have an independent power plant. It sort of sounds that way to me. So I'd just like to be sure that that's aligned with what our goals are in the town.
You can be assured it's a high priority, John, for our committee.
Thank you.
Hey,
Right.
John, it's Tim Rumpf again. One of the things that we were, Tony's office and our office have been talking about is the commitment to the sustainable aspects that the town is, the town has on the books at this point in the future. One of the issues, we've just gotten into this a little bit with the STAR board. And before we started to spend a lot of time and to be honest with you, their money to figure out these issues, we wanted to get an indication from your board about the commitment to the site, because it's very site specific, as you know. So that's, we can supply all of these technical reports for you and work with the Sustainable Committee in the town through that process, because I think it's going to be, I anticipate us going, to the planning board and to the engineering department and being compliant with all town regulations. So, and we've talked about this with the town, the STAR board as well, so they're very aware of it. So that's where we are at this point. We thank, we're hearing a lot of positive things for the site, so I think it's very positive for us to move forward with these, doing these more technical reports at this point.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tim, and I'm glad that you're part of this. I think it would be prudent and worthwhile to meet up with some of our group, particularly from our green group, our energy group. There are some issues, obviously, that are sort of evolving now, and relative to power generation and meeting peak goals and all those sorts of things. And so we have initiatives, sort of lined up, and I'd really just like to be able to have you have that correspondence, to that communication with these groups to let you know the sort of some of the underlying issues that are emerging as a result of trying to meet some of the power consumption goals that, or some of the issues involved with the power consumption locally. So if we could do that, I think that would be worthwhile, just to get you informed on those issues that are at the basis of my questions.
Sure.
I'd also, Jay?
Go ahead, Tom Joe.
Thank you. In addition to the specs on the power usage and consumption, could you tell us a little bit about the finance side of this? What's the structure of this, and how much would a building like this cost, and how that's going to get done?
Well, originally, when we were looking at a 43,000 square foot building, we were looking at construction costs over 20 million and soft costs being close to 25. Since we scaled this back, we're anticipating capital building costs being around 14 to 15 million, and soft costs hopefully staying under 20. And operationally speaking, while we know that we would continue to do fundraising annually, it's our hope right now, and we cannot speak to it, but we can tell you that when Kim came on last November, we lost a year trying to find the right executive director, but we know we've got her now. And with Kim's help, we are lined up for some significant asks in the next 2 months that we anticipate being able to cover our capital expense, and we will not stop until we have enough in reserve to cover operating expenses, at least for a few years. I mean, people said, well, maybe we should stop this right now, given COVID. Actually, the idea that we are facing this before we have an empty facility and we're not planning accordingly, I think the moment is so perfect for us to consider all of these elements in our design and planning. And we're confident that with the move to this location and with the move to scale this back, that we can generate the necessary funding that will all be privately done and that will continue ongoing for operating expenses until we have sufficient reserve to cover. But as I said, I think I was very excited to hear from guys like the Sports Facilities Advisory Group, which spoke before the town board when we asked for the land 2 years ago. Their projections are changing this to suggest that within 3 years, having downscaled this, we could actually start operating in the black and generating money as opposed to just draining it. So we're pretty excited that the rethinking, the listening to the community about what we need, making this really community driven and not looking to make it a regional panacea for every swim need, that we're honing in on taking care of our own. And I just want to close with one comment that one of our board members said, and I think it capitalizes on what we're after. Great communities have great facilities for their citizens. And this Star Aqua Center will be the thing that our people deserve and need living in an area surrounded by water. So we hope we can make this dream a reality, and we can get this construction done in the next couple of years.
Josephine?
Hey, Joe. Sorry, this is Julie Lassiter. I just have one last quick question. Joe, the last time I saw you was at the North Sea CAC. Have you been able, I think that was right before the pandemic hit, have you been able to get to the Southampton, Shinnecock Hills, Tuckahoe CAC and spoke with them yet?
We've been speaking to individual members, and what I'm pleased to tell you is that people who oppose the Tuckahoe Center, a number of them have said to us they wouldn't think that would be an appropriate use, but they were quote unquote excited about the potential use for this kind of a facility. This will be a very different traffic pattern and profile than the strip mall, which it was much larger and going to get a lot more traffic use. And I would just say, Julie, I think Kim Folks hit it on the head. Traffic is an issue. We're not denying that. But the community has to ask itself, do we want traffic and a facility or traffic and no facility? Because traffic is traffic. It'll be heavy at a couple of key moments during the course of the day. But during the day, it will have far less use than a strip mall.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Is it possible that we can get a copy of your presentation and that we can share it with interested CACs in the area?
Absolutely, and we're happy to meet with anyone who wants to have a further conversation.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Let me say a couple things. One, so this piece, which was purchased for CPF, the board at times has considered several different things for it. We considered a possible swap with the Tuckahoe Woods property, which was not a CPF purchase, but is is heavily wooded and adjoins other CPF land. We talked, that was purchased for affordable housing, maybe swapping and doing affordable housing here. This is right next to the press property where we are planning to do some affordable houses in that area. We have, through the Southampton Business Alliance, built a couple houses in this area right along. Should the board be inclined to consider this use, it seems the first step would be some sort of public hearing on amending the CPF and management plan. And then the public would be able to come out and tell us whether they think this is a good use for this property. Clearly is something the community desires. But when you pick a spot, that's usually where you find the issues. So this may be a great spot. I don't know. And it certainly, we need to hear from the community, the people who reside in and around this area. There is a traffic light at the corner, though it doesn't have a green arrow. It's possible the county would consider putting a left turning arrow there to make it easier to exit this property. It's something that could be part of the conversation. But even without the left turning arrow, I don't see a lot of volume coming from a site like this. So I think, the next step, should the board be inclined to consider this, would be to have some sort of public hearing. Now, it is challenging, as you know, to do public hearings during a pandemic, just like it was getting this meeting up and running. Technologically, it's not, there are barriers to public participation. So, we may want to wait for any sort of public hearing to a point where we can have it at town hall and we can invite in attendees, or maybe schedule it for a different building like the high school auditorium, where you could easily social distance and make a larger presentation that people could see. If we didn't want to wait too long. My sense is we've waited a long time already, and the pandemic is probably going to be with us for a while longer. So maybe that's the direction we should head if the board is willing to consider this. I, for one, am willing to consider this and get public information, get public input on it. So maybe that's, if the other board members support that, we could shoot for, maybe an August hearing at the high school or something like that. If the high school is willing to allow for it. In the auditorium, we could easily have 6 feet of separation between seats. So any thought on that? Any board members, or do you want to proceed to rescind the Red Creek Park authorization and switch it to this piece and consider this piece for active recreation with an indoor aquatics facility? Maybe we'll just,
Well, I have
Respectfully
just
ask-
a question on that, I think if you give up the 2 acres in Red Creek and then find that at the end of the day, the other property that's being considered on McGee Street is precluded from this use for whatever reason, until, I think it's important that, I support it, but I also want to be sure that we don't leave Star, out on the street with no properties available to them. So,
Yeah.
but concept, I support that. I just think, I don't want to put the cart before the horse until we know that this current property that they're talking about is, everything that it's meant to be, and that we can use it the way they're proposing.
right. So obviously the reason why we locked up a property for them is they can't effectively get fundraising commitments if it's not real, if they have an idea but no place to land it. So that was sort of the idea behind Red Creek, is that they knew they could build it. They had a place to build it if they were able to raise the money. Yeah, I guess we could wait to a later date to rescind the land we're holding in Hampton Bays until we can make that decision after we've made a decision about this.
I would respectfully ask you to do it in that order. Thank you.
I'm interested to know what the public would think about this, and I would fully support a public hearing on this in August when it's safe to do so. I wouldn't want the pandemic to put this off, months to kind of delay the program. So if we could use the high school or some other space where we can socially distance ourselves and our constituents, we should do that.
I just want to add a comment, if I could. I don't think I have to explain to any of the board or the people that are involved in this project that, we have an interesting cycle of opportunity out here in terms of interest. And while people are out and enjoying this area, they are also much more inclined to support something when it is right in their on their plate, so to speak. So whatever we could do, we certainly as STAR want to give the public opportunity to voice their opinion. But I would just respectfully request that whatever way we could do this that would fast track this in an appropriate manner, that we do that as quickly as possible for us to take advantage of the summer season. So whatever we could do to push this forward and whatever we can provide to the board or to the public to address questions and concerns, we would happily do so.
Right. Well, you have a good team there, Kim. Fast in government is not ever as fast as people. So, should we be able to get to the point where this is an approved site from the town board's perspective, we still, you'll be subject to SECRA. You'll have the traffic analysis may largely be done because it was done for the Tuckahoe Center, and a lot of the baseline data will be available. But we're going to certainly send it through the planning board for some either mandatory or advisory opinion there, even though the town property architectural review, there'll be a lot. Unfortunately, nothing like this can happen too quickly. We could try to expedite to the best of our ability. I think for the board, our main concern is, what does the public think? What does the public think about the use in the site? I'm sure that not everybody's going to be on the same page, but if it's, overwhelmingly positive, I think that it'll create the fertile ground for the town to be able to move this forward. If more people are opposed to it, then it probably, it's likely won't proceed. So I think it's going to be up to you to sort of, plant the seed within the community and nourish it, and get the support from the various user groups. Lots of seniors in our community that probably would, swimming is such a great way to exercise. It's, easier for, on the body than some of the other athletic activities. So I think you have the potential to get a tremendous amount of community support for this type of use. So, and it certainly would enhance, for me, life in Southampton town. To have a facility like this, I would use it, I'm sure, but I'm sure a lot of people would go there and use this facility. Particularly since you typically can't go swimming in the middle of the winter, and then you would be able to with a facility like this. And the idea that we could, our kids before jumping in the ocean would be able to become strong swimmers is terrific. Our lifeguard program would use this facility. Our schools certainly would use it. So, I guess let me hear. We haven't heard anything from Councilman Martell on this. Rick, did you want to share any thoughts?
Absolutely. So my first thought when it first came out in Red Creek Park, I thought the area was too small. I thought it was a little ambitious, a plan for that area. We have parking problems in all of Red Creek Park. I think this plan is much better. I think the accessibility to the different school districts and to County Road 39 makes it a perfect location. So I'm 100% in favor.
Thank you, Rick.
All right, excellent. All right, so is everybody okay with me trying to put together a public hearing? I'd have to do a resolution to, consider amending the CPF management and stewardship plan for this property. I'd want to talk to Lisa Combrink, our CPF program manager, on that, and see what her thoughts were. I'd want to have another conversation with Assemblyman Thiel just to be sure that, in terms of what the process was and making sure that that's not a prohibited type of use. But assuming we could move forward, everybody's okay with something in August, and at the Southampton High School, I think would be a good location for it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, I am.
I'm fine with that, Jay, but I just want to echo exactly what you said, that I think we need an opinion from the Opinions Bureau from CPF, and have a conversation with Lisa and with Assemblyman Thiel again. Just to, you need to narrow this down before I feel, before you have a public hearing on that. I just want to be sure that there's no obstacles, or we don't get a late stop, in the middle of the good inertia I know that Kim wants to take advantage of.
Okay, I don't know about the Opinions Board and how long that would take. Assemblyman Thiel has been sort of the authority on these matters. If it's a gray area, then we go to the Opinions Board. But
yeah, I personally don't think it's a gray area, but I just think you need to have that documented.
Okay. I'm not sure how to.
I think it's a phone call. Sit with Lisa and get on the phone with the Assemblyman.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, those two steps. Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Okay. So I'll work with the town attorney, and we'll put something together. I guess we'll do it at a special meeting in August. So we'll make sure all the proper notifications are made. We have, I know there's at least one media outlet that's watching this meeting right now, so I imagine there'll be an article written that gets read about this. We'll start to get public input. Hopefully it'll be positive. I think so. And then we'll take it from there.
Great.
Very good.
Great.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Jay, and town board members, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
So we're going to continue on with the agenda. The only thing I have left is executive session on acquisitions and litigation, which will be done through a separate telephone call, which you've been provided the information on. Is there any other business? Okay, seeing none, I will make a motion to end our work session and go into executive session on litigation and acquisitions.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Bouvier. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you all. We're adjourned for all other purposes.
Good afternoon, folks. Take care.